Today on the Coach of What podcast, we have a very special guest. This coach is no stranger to success on or off the pitch. When she was a player, she won back-to-back titles as a junior and senior, and then she transitioned directly into coaching out of high school. And while she's been coaching, she's made it to 19 state championship games here in the state of New Mexico, being a runner-up 9 times and winning the state title 10 times, as well as a whole bunch of other accolades when it comes to coaching in the state of New Mexico. Today, we welcome Coach Amber Ashcraft to the Coach of What podcast. With the world of coaching evolving and the carousel always changing, we're going to sit down with some coaches and we're going to figure out what they coach, how they coach, and most importantly, why they got into this profession. My name is Kason Wilkinson, and I am your host of the Coach's Why podcast.
That's a great question.
That was my Coach's Why.
Welcome back to another Coach Why podcast. We have a very special guest in the building today, a fellow New Mexican coach, Coach Amber Ashcraft, all the way from La Cueva High School in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Coach, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Sorry to take you away from Liverpool right now. I know that was something you told me about, but I appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Yes.
I'll be honest, I don't like Liverpool, so that's why I say that. I'm not a big Liverpool.
Are you a Man U fan?
I'm not, no. I'm actually not really a Premier League fan, to be honest with you. But if I am, I'm an Arsenal fan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm more of a La Liga guy. I like Atletico Madrid. That's my favorite. Yep. That's my favorite club team. Now it's more. I like PSG a lot because I like Mbappe and all of what they've done. Mbappe is my favorite up and coming player. But from the core, it's been Atletico or Arsenal. So you probably feel the same way towards Arsenal, but it's okay.
I do. Yeah. I don't mind Arsenal though. I don't mind them. So, I love soccer, so I'm not, I really like to follow players a lot. And so I kind of I don't mind them.
Okay, well, I'll take that. Yep. All right. That's all right. Hey, it could be Man U, as you said, or Man City, and we'd have a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that's right. I would say no way.
Yeah, I'm just going to log off now. Yeah, I'm going to log off now. Yeah. Fair, absolutely. So, like I said, I appreciate you jumping on here today, and you said you've listened to a few of these, and if this is your first time listening to the show, I always like to pass it along to Coach to kind of let us know a little bit about her and about you. So, if you wouldn't mind letting us know kind of where you grew up and then when you got involved in the sports, kind of sports in general, but also, particularly the sport of soccer.
I was born in Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas City, Kansas. Oh my God, I cannot believe I just said Missouri. I was thinking of the Chiefs. I'm not, funny thing is I'm not a Chiefs fan.
Okay.
But, and then my dad was in the military, and so we moved around quite a bit, and he got out of the military and he landed a job here in Albuquerque when I was in the 3rd grade. Okay. And I have been playing sports since I was 5 years old. Playing soccer majority. I also was a swimmer in high school. So I swam my whole entire life up until high school. And then played soccer, of course, all the way through high school. So I did both of those sports, and we skied as a family. So we're a big skiing family, and our family still is a big skiing family. I just started at soccer at 5. I played on a boys team because that's what you had to do back then. And then we moved to Albuquerque, started to get on a girls team. And then by 4th grade, I was playing club soccer and, kind of went from there. And I went to La Cueva High School. So I'm also a La Cueva High School graduate.
Awesome. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
And I skipped over this, guys. So she is the head women's coach at La Cueva for soccer. So I did skip that. That's why we started talking soccer at the beginning of this. I promise. But so you mentioned you kind of moved around a little bit till you found a kind of new home in Albuquerque, and you're a La Cueva graduate and alum. And you said that you played some club soccer. So let's talk a little bit about club soccer, because I feel like that is a relative hot topic in today's world. I think of all sports, but club soccer specifically, right, is a huge piece of not only in New Mexico, but I think nationwide. And as a high school coach, you kind of have, you're kind of in the middle of it essentially, right? Kind of as they're transitioning from club into the high school scene. So I guess the two questions I have for you, and you can answer it however you want, kind of in a two-parter, is when it comes to club soccer, how do you feel like that either takes away or benefits athletes in high school, as well as maybe how they may, benefit from doing that with you? But then also, how do you feel like that maybe on a national scale, I wouldn't say as a pay to play type of thing, but we also know that club soccer is kind of one of the biggest things to be quote unquote seen to get to maybe the high level college or maybe the USMT or USWMT, right, or USWNT. You to get to that type of level, club is I feel like is a very important piece of your process. So I guess you can kind of answer it in two ways there.
Yeah, club soccer is a catch-22 for most high school coaches. I mean, like for any high school coach, I think any club aspect is a really catch-22. Now, the NMAA did change the rules in the past year that we can coach a club team that is at the high school level. So I've coached club, but I've always coached young kids or like young girls, and I coached boys too. Young boys and girls until they got into the 7th grade. And then I've had to give up those club teams because they've gone into the 8th grade and then they're considered high school eligible. So the NMA's changed that. Do I like that aspect? I really don't.
Okay.
I think there needs to be separation. I think that they're apples and oranges. I think high school soccer and club soccer are apples and oranges. They're two totally different entities. In club, it is, in my opinion, a kind of a pay to play situation. You're paying to travel. So a lot of my girls don't even play soccer games, like club soccer games here in New Mexico anymore. That teams from Denver are traveling here to play them, and Phoenix and Utah. And, so they're traveling almost every weekend or every other weekend. And then teams are traveling here to play them. So they're not playing each other anymore. So like when I grew up, we had like 6 really good club soccer teams, all at the same age level.
Yeah, right.
All at the same, I'm at 75. So I would say like 75, 74, 70, 76s. And we played each other. And that's how, then you won state that way, kind of like the high school season is.
Right.
And then you kind of like moved on. And I get that, we did travel to play tournaments and stuff, but the whole aspect of it's thousands and thousands of dollars now to be able to play club soccer, I have an issue with, especially because they're traveling and they're getting beat 9-0, 6-0, 4-1. And so what, in my opinion, what's the purpose of all of that? When there is really good talent within the state that they could manage better.
Right. Yeah. I think, and I could tell whenever I was asking that question, it was a hot topic for sure. I could tell it was definitely one of those conversations. But I think also too, right. And I'll just say this too. I've mentioned it in other shows, but I feel like there has to be as you mentioned, kind of a fine line. But I also think that if there's going to be either a change from NMAA or allowing how it was prior to in general, I think that, and I'm going to ask this question, but I'll go back to it because I don't know if club soccer ran during soccer season. But I think that if you have a year-round club opportunity, I think that if those kids are still wanting to put in the extra work, maybe as an individual as well with those coaches during season, they have to work together as a high school coach to club coach in a sense of that, if this kid's going to come to my practice, I have them during this time frame. And from, in your case, right, like August to October, probably, right? Maybe
middle of November.
November, right? Okay. And then so during this time, what I'm saying, whatever the case is, has to take priority, and they can't go to you and you try to switch it up completely, because then I think it kind of gets what's the right term? Kind of gets the kids confused in a sense to where, well, my high school coach told me this, my club coach told me this, I'm paying for this, but I'm trying to win a state title right here. So it can get really confusing in an athlete's world when I think ultimately club coaches want the best for their kid. Some coaches, I don't know them, I haven't met them, but I'm sure there are some money grabs out there where they're just doing it for the money. They're taking some money from it. But I feel like ultimately they do want to take some kids and be good with them, right? They do want the ultimate best for the kid. And obviously that's the same thing for the high school coach. But because there is that middle ground, and I could be wrong, every sport's different, I think that there is that commonality that needs to kind of be brought to center versus how it can get, like I said, get these kids confused when they are doing those club sports.
Yes, there is a commonality, that we merge kind of all together. thankfully, so far in the state of New Mexico, because of how our high school season is set up, we don't have any club interference.
Oh, nice.
So like my players' last tournament might be the end of July, and then I usually start the end of July. So I'm also one of those high school coaches that does not interfere at all with club soccer. Once my girls, I let them do whatever they need to for club, and then I don't do anything over the summer. And then I start seeing them at the end of July, just so that they can have club and they're not having to worry about, oh, I didn't show up for this high school and then this girl showed up. And, it just gets messy. When you start taking attendance, it kind of just gets messy. And so I just don't do it. I know that they're all playing club soccer up until the middle of July. I'm hoping that they get a couple of weeks break and then they start back up with me at the end of July. And then it really doesn't interfere with me at all. And then they literally will start, like we played, I think it was like the 10th of November this year with the state finals, and girls had practice the next day.
Okay.
My girls know that high school is high school. That comes first. They are not allowed to do club at all. It doesn't affect girls' side of it, but it is starting to affect the boys' side of it with United Academy. So boys' club is the same as girls' club, but if you play for the United Academy, it affects the games and those types of things a little bit more. And if you have girls like on the national team, they play year round, so that's going to affect it. You just have to watch the game limitations.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's interesting that and how I want to word this, because I think that soccer in general, and this is going to kind of go, since you mentioned the national side of things and how I mentioned earlier the pay to play, specifically sport in New Mexico, there's a lot of really good soccer talent, right? And there really is. But I wonder, and I've had this conversation with other coaches, soccer's in particular. Soccer is one of my favorite sports. I could talk soccer for a long time. I've played soccer for a long time, or played it growing up. One of my favorites to watch, and obviously watching, like, let's just speak on the men's world team. It's hard to watch because those are the best soccer athletes, but they're not America's best athletes, right? Versus in other countries, right? You might talk about Argentina or Mexico or whomever, and you probably have their best athletes in the sport of soccer or in their football, whatever. And that's why they're so good. And it's like, we may not ever see that. And part of that, I think, which may be transitioning, because I'm not, club has really taken over heavily the last decade or so, but maybe more, but roughly in that time frame, to where some of those kids don't have the ability to play soccer, so they go into football or basketball or some other sports that don't. I mean, they're still expensive, but maybe not as much, because they don't have that. If you want to play on a national traveling team, sure. But the idea is some of those sports you can get really good and find that talent in America, because that's, for one, our big four, but also you don't have to pay as much money to get there. So I want, it's kind of hard, because those pay to plays, I feel like, hinder the type of talent we might see on the men's side, and possibly even the women's side too at some point. I don't know if that's the case.
They do. If you really look at, like, and you look at football, and let's just take, American football for an example. Yep. You can play Yaffle. It doesn't cost that much money to play Yaffle. You can play flag. It's not crazy amounts of money. And then they get straight into high school. Well, that's where they're recruited out of. Mm-hmm. And soccer isn't recruited out. And I do have girls that have been recruited out of high school that, coaches have come to see them play in high school. Also, just for the simple fact is, high school soccer and college soccer are closest to each other. They mimic each other the most. You're with those girls during that season. You have to see each other every day, type of those situations. So we do have, coaches that come watch us play. But they are mostly recruited out of club. And if you're having to go to a showcase tournament, that's where most of the coaches show up and see. So, you go to Las Vegas in March and, there's 100 coaches there, but you've had to have the ability and the expenses to be able to get to Las Vegas in March and play on that team, to have coaches looking at you. The thing that is changing, especially for the men's side of it, is the academies like New Mexico Academy, like the United Academy, where it's not a pay to play as much as it would be if you're playing for a club like Rio.
Right. Okay, that's fair. And like this will probably be the last question I have before we go back to you as a coach, because like I said, I can rant on this, and I don't want to talk for
I
4 hours. I mean, hey, Joe Rogan. Hey, I've always been wondering, like, I don't know how Joe Rogan talks for 4 hours, but I might have this. Might it's easier for me to talk for 4 hours if we're talking coaching. But like United FC, right, or New Mexico United, excuse me.
Yeah.
How they've came in here and I feel like made a really good impact in the sense of bringing some sort of bigger picture soccer to especially since UNM cut their program, which is crazy. They were really good, but I know whole nother conversation. But they kind of brought that upper sense of bigger things, right, for soccer here. And so you're right there in the metro, right? And I know from an outskirt being up north, kind of what it's been like. But how do you feel like New Mexico United has, you can, I guess, affected, because it could be positive or negatively, but how do you feel like it's affected maybe not only soccer for New Mexico, but maybe in particular the high school or club athlete who are looking to continue to obviously grow, potentially get to the next level or whatever their goals may be?
On the boys' side, I think it has really helped because you have a bunch of players that wouldn't be able to afford to be able to travel that way, and they're in that academy, and they're able to play for them and have some type of travel and be able to do those things, and they're being looked at locally within an organization that hopefully, like it is done in Europe, where they bring that talent all the way through, and then they're playing for the top team. And so
Right.
that type of situation. Now on the women's side, it's not there yet. Even in the WMLS, a lot of the talent is looked at through college.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so, we
Yes.
just have a totally different mindset in America because we have college athletes versus someone at 14 that goes pro in Europe. And
Oh
so
yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
completely different way of doing things. And it's a catch-22, I think, on both sides of what develops a player better.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember when Neymar went pro and he was like my age or younger than me, and I think I was 17 at the time whenever I heard him go pro, and I was like, dang, that's crazy. But same thing talking about the pay to play, and I've mentioned this before. Those guys are just they do it for the love of the sport, and they're playing soccer in their backyard or they're playing with their friends and just watching soccer, and they're trying to develop those skills as a priority, and they're able to get to whether it's within a or within an organization or just going and tearing kids up, getting seen and doing that because they are looked within, those scouts or whomever are looking within versus trying to. And I guess that's kind of a broad term because Brazil's huge, but the idea is that they're putting the effort in individually to get seen versus being paid to play essentially to be seen, right? They're
Yes,
doing the work to be seen naturally or whatever.
that's right.
So sweet. So kind of, let me ask you this: did you have a chance to play soccer at the next level?
No, I didn't. I started coaching right away.
Right away. Okay.
I graduated high school in 1993, and I was the C team girls soccer coach at La Cueva in the fall of '93. So I just literally just went from playing straight into coaching.
Wow. Okay. So what when it comes to that, like, and so have you been in La Cueva the whole time?
I have.
Oh wow. Okay. So you were tried and true with what is it, a bear, right? The
Yep,
Bears. And I know you guys have a lot of haters out there in the state of New
we do.
Mexico across the board, every sport, regardless of whom they may be. So like you've seen the transition, and I don't know if La Cueva was that
Yeah.
good at that time or if it's really been a development over. Have they always been pretty good?
No, so when I was there, we won 4 state championships in a row.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we have, so my program has 17 girls state championships.
Okay.
And our first state championship was in the fall of '89. I was a freshman then, and we won 7 straight championships.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I played in 3 and 4. So I was on
Mhm.
varsity 3 and 4. I played in 3 and 4, and then I coached 7.
Wow. Okay. So La Cueva's had a pretty good track record of success, and so let me ask you this because let's just go. Let me ask that question. What makes La Cueva so good at most of their sports. And I say this because, and I'm not saying that other schools aren't good, right? Cleveland's very good. Volcano's very good, right? Piedra Vista's been good at some other sports throughout its time. And every school kind of has its forte in sports. But I feel like La Cueva's been pretty relative in most sports for the most part. So is it because of the district you're in and like where people move to and they like that school district to where talent's kind of more attracted there? Is it the development that your maybe your strength and conditioning or something like that, right? Maybe the right coaches, whatever the case is, that has helped develop it over time? Or is it more of the tradition? And you can answer it, it doesn't have to be any of these, but is it more of the tradition that La Cueva's built over the time from the 80s or 70s, however long it's been a school, to still to this day? I mean, what is it that makes La Cueva so good, and especially specifically in the metro, but I guess as a statewide school?
I think that it really has to come down to the community.
Okay.
I think that you have a community that whose parents, majority of them, have second degrees. So when you have a family that strives to have a second degree, a master's, a doctorate, whatever that is, lawyers, whatever it is, most of them own their own businesses. It is like ingrained that you strive for perfection.
Right.
And when I was at La Cueva, I was one of the first classes there. It opened in 86 and I graduated in 93.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
I was there from the very beginning. It's always been that way. It's always been, you strive for excellence. That's the motto at La Cueva. Excellence is a habit is the motto. And you just strive for excellence. And especially for me within my program, I have a set of standards and I expect my girls to meet those standards. I don't lower my standards for anything. We are expected to be in the final game every year. And if we're not, it's a disappointment. And so even if we lose in the final game, which we've lost a lot of finals, it's a disappointment. And so you just have a mentality of expectations. And I think that the school started winning from the very beginning. And those expectations have just carried all the way through to present time.
Right. Yeah. I guess, yeah, it helps whenever you win, right? It attracts high school, it attracts people who are moving to this area to want their kids to be a part of that or, to experience that. And so that, yeah, absolutely. It does help that it's been like that from the beginning too, so that definitely goes a long way. So now that you've kind of let us know that you started coaching right away and you went straight into it, what made you decide that you wanted to go into coaching? Like you went straight from high school to coaching. So what was it about the idea of coaching or whatever the case is that made you like, I want to do this?
It's really funny. It just kind of fell into my lap, in all honesty.
Okay.
I played, and I was a good soccer player. I wasn't a great soccer player, but I was good. I started, I scored a winning PK my senior year of high school in the semifinal game to get us into the final. So I was a good soccer player. I wasn't a great soccer player. And funny enough, my father ran into Coach Rusk, who coaches at Cleveland now, but he was my coach at La Cueva when I was there. And over the summer, and Coach Rusk just happened to ask my dad, "Hey, what's Amber doing in the fall?" And he said, "Oh, she's going to UNM." And they said, "Well, would you like to coach the C team?" And that's how I got the job.
Wow. Yeah.
They had a conversation. My dad came home and he was like, "Do you want to coach a C team?" And I was like, "Yeah, I would love to." I wanted to be a teacher. I always wanted to kind of have those aspirations. And so I started coaching the C team. And then the next year I was the assistant JV coach. And then I ended up being the head JV coach. And within 3 years, I was the assistant varsity coach. And within 4 years, I was the head varsity coach. So
Wow.
I coached girls on varsity that were freshmen when I was a senior.
Yeah. Wow. So you went, that was a very quick transition.
Quickly.
Yes.
It was a quick transition. And then I loved it. I absolutely, and I still to this day, absolutely love coaching. I love my players. I love the school. I love the community. And so it's just something that has kind of just something that stuck with me. And it's just kind of been, something that I've done. And being a female and being really young in that position is really difficult and different. But also just being a female and being able to coach females is something that I'm proud of, because there's not a lot of female women soccer coaches around.
Right, absolutely. No, that's awesome. You know, you took an opportunity and you ran with it, and now you found a lot of success. And so it sounds like was it Russ, right? Coach Russ was an important piece of your life. So what coaches made an impact on? So actually, I guess the best way to word this is, what coach or coaches made an impact on your life, and who were they and why?
I would say Coach Rusk had a huge impact on my life. You know, for soccer wise, my assistant soccer coach at La Cueva, Enrique Serrano, had a huge impact on the way that I played the game and the way that I saw the game, and things were just a little different. You know, those two coaches. I had some swimming coaches throughout my life that really like changed the way that like I saw things. And swimming's such a different sport, but coaches can still have a huge impact on how you see things. I never really had a female soccer coach, and so I just kind of took what the guys did, and I've always watch sports. Like, I am a sports fanatic, like a crazy sports person. And so it kind of drives my husband absolutely batty sometimes, because I'm like, oh, there's sports on today. And, I can sit in front of the TV for 5 hours and watch sports. And I watch all sports. I'm like, I'm a little crazy about it. But so I kind of just followed coaches, and I followed, other people that like I will take snippets here and there from like what I like about things.
Yeah, that was a great thing that you just mentioned, that you've taken some things from these coaches. And one of my favorite things to ask, just on the level of like, maybe makes you think a little bit. But what is maybe one or two of the biggest things, and maybe you can answer this on like a mental side and like a physical or a coaching, like the game side of things. But what do you feel like you've taken from your coaches, maybe from, like I said, the mental and or the game side, that you have implemented towards your coaching career and or your athletes? So like one of the biggest things from both sides of that you've been able to take and implement to your athletes and programs.
Striving to be your best, like striving to do the best. And it didn't matter what that looked like. Like with Coach Rusk, he was just very adamant about like how sharp our passes were, and like things needed to be clean and sharp on the field. And if you made a mistake, he let you know you made a mistake, and you were sitting on the bench. And you took that to heart, and so you wanted to do better. You wanted to do better for your team, yourself, and for him. And so like those types of things, I really think having that mental sharpness and that mental ability to like always strive to do better is something that I've really tried to like push through the program since I was there.
Absolutely.
So I know that you mentioned I guess talking about some of these things, how you've kind of continued to try to instill that and continue to do that and make sure athletes strive for perfection or strive to be the best they can be, right? I guess perfection's a goal. But as you mentioned, when you played, you got coached completely different than probably he's coaching these girls now. And same thing for me. I got coached differently than I have to coach these athletes now, right? And it's always been that way. You probably got coached different than me and blah, blah, blah down the line. So I guess as a coaching standpoint, how have you evolved, especially since you've been doing this since the mid-90s, right? How have you evolved as a coach, and how has that been for you on the level of maybe some challenges or maybe just in general, having to evolve with not only the game, but coaching the individuals?
I'm much nicer now, but it's not as nice.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I had to be, I was 22, 23 years old, and I'm the head varsity soccer coach at La Cueva. I had to be strict, and you followed my rules or you were out. Like, and I am still that way. You follow my rules or you're out, but it's a whole different like attitude towards it. And I think that I have a lot better like clarity on like what is mostly important and what needs to happen. Those types of things. But yeah, I got coached completely different. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I got
we got some guests in the house listening to us right now.
We have a Rhodesian Ridgeback that's whining at me. I got coached completely different than I would have ever probably coached. But back in the 90s, it was a completely different like type of situation, a way that people got coached, in the way that you you had did not have an attitude, and you were like, yes sir, like whatever you need, and you just didn't question things. You didn't question anything. I'm now used to people questioning things like, okay, well, why did this happen, or why is this girl captain, or why did this happen, or what's going on here? And so I'm a lot more open to the way that I coach now, and I have a lot more open communication with my team. Like before, I would just be like, these are expectations and this is what we're going to do. And now it's a conversation. It's like, how are we going to get there? Like, what are we going to do? Like, we still have the same expectations, but it's a different, viewpoint on how we're going to get there.
Absolutely.
So why do you think that athletes today, and obviously we experience that same thing, but why do you feel like athletes and maybe communities or administration or whomever is these people in asking these questions, especially, I guess, particularly the athletes, why do you think that is? I mean, it's hard for me to say. I think that athletes, maybe they're raised that way, right? It's okay to question authority, I guess. Or maybe it's because of the social media and because whatever has led up to today, the time and age, COVID maybe played a factor. You've been doing it before COVID, so it might have been that way before. But like, I guess in general, what do you think is the reason behind being okay to question a coach or a teacher or of that title, essentially?
I think it started with the parents, in all honesty. Okay. I think that the parents started to get a lot more aggressive in the way that they could ask questions and do those things. So I think that the parents just kind of took a little bit more of an initiative in wanting to know, well, why did this girl make varsity and I made JV, or what had happened, or what does my player need to do to get better? And to be a better coach, I think I had to also say, okay, let's have a conversation. Like, if you didn't make varsity, let's sit down. If you wanted to make varsity and you didn't, then you can come up and talk to me and let's have a conversation on why you think. And I've had to change things. Like, we used to just list players on the team, 1 to 22. Here were the 22 girls that made varsity. And then we went to numbers. And then I decided, you know what? I'm going to tell these girls to their face if they made varsity JV or they got cut. And that made my life, as hard as that is, that made my life 10 times easier. Because I can have the conversation right then and there. Yeah. Hey, this is where you're at. This is what you needed to do to work better to make varsity, or this is why you didn't make varsity at all, and you didn't make a team in my, because seniors I don't put on JV. So this is, why you didn't make a team.
So
why do you think? Actually, I guess I like that you are talking to them face to face, because you can answer any questions if they have it up at that, or whatever the case. You can kind of overcome those hurdles in the moment. But in I don't know if it's I guess my question is, because I've never asked this, so I'm trying to figure out how I want to word it. Like, in the world of floating, right? Like, there's kids who float from JV to varsity, things like that. But I know you mentioned, like, if a kid, they don't make your team, they don't make varsity, right? Because of whatever's going on. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is do you have those JV kids or C team kids who can go up and float, and then that's just how it is, and you just have like a certain number? Or are you kind of, if like cutting kids, or like, I guess throughout the year, only keeping JV with JV, keeping C team with C team, varsity with varsity, and only moving if injuries?
I only move if it's a dire need. I do not move girls. Yeah. Girls don't like to get moved. Girls are very cliquish, and they want, if I make a team, that's the team that they want from the very beginning, and they do not want movement. And I didn't want movement. When I played varsity, I didn't want the JV girls coming up and being on varsity. Like, you had your team. This is the way that it was. And so I don't move players. It is very, very rare it's very rare for me to like, if I have like a couple of injuries come down to the state tournament and I need 2 girls to sit on the bench, but I've only done that like 4 times in like the 28 years I've been doing this. It's not been long. I don't do very much.
No,
Yeah, that's interesting. And I don't know, and I know you mentioned the very cliquish. It's interesting because I know you say that they don't want to be moved and they don't want to, do that. But I feel like that is something that I know that you say like strive to be perfection, right? But like as a JV kid, like my goal is to get promoted. Like that's what I want. I don't like I love my girls on JV or my guys, right? I guess in that case, my case, but in their case, I love these girls. But if I have an opportunity to go win a state title, to go up and be this, even if I'm a rotation or whatever, because I guess I don't know the true, like, I know in MLS and actual professional soccer, you get X amount of substitutions that can't come on and off the pitch. In the game down here, you may get substitutions, but the idea is like, regardless of if I get in the game or not, I want to be able to be ready to make that impact. So like, I guess what I'm saying is like, I like that you do that to make people, hopefully build that culture within that group. So when they do go up, right, as a JV girls group, you don't have to worry about trying to build that camaraderie around each other. But also, like, if I'm an individual, like, I love this group, I love my blah, 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 but I want to go play varsity. And if I didn't get there in August or September, count me in, coach, in late October or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like that type of mentality.
And I've had to do that, and I don't ever say never. It doesn't happen a lot, but I've had to do that. I actually, my JV coach, when she was a sophomore, didn't make varsity, and she was so disappointed and she was so upset. And I said, you're just going to have to keep, this is what I need you to work on. And I lost 3 players at the end of October, and she got pulled up to varsity, and we won a state championship that year.
Awesome.
So it does happen. It does happen. You just kind of keep them working and working, and my JV kind of runs the way that, I let my coaches like really decide on where they're going to play players, but hey, this is what we need to be working on, our touches or our first touch or, our passing abilities. And then I do go to the games and watch them play and see if we need help. But, I'm blessed enough at La Cueva where, I can have 60 girls try out for 42 spots.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I had to get rid of a C team. I don't have C team soccer anymore because no other high school has C team soccer. And so my girls don't have anyone to play. So, last year I took 22 on varsity and 24 at JV to be able to hold enough girls in the program to have as many as I could.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So you are showing up to these athletes' games is huge. I think that if a head coach pops in or shows that they still care about the program, even though obviously you're invested in the varsity to succeed, I found that it's like as a coach in wrestling, when a head coach jumps down and coaches some technique of a younger kid, I feel like they've what's the right term? They appreciate it a little bit more. Like, oh, he does see me, or in your case, she does see me. So I definitely appreciate that.
I go and I hide though. I don't want them to know I'm there. So
I got you.
I mean, they know that I'm there, but I don't sit on the bench. I don't do anything. I kind of just like sneak in.
Yeah, Raptors. Yeah.
They get so nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a scout when they show up. Yeah, exactly. So I guess kind of going into how you said that you guys like to work and that's kind of how you continue to grow. How do you develop? And if you guys don't know, as Coach already mentioned, she's won multiple state titles from when she was in high school to, the first 7 years or first 3-4 years out of high school coaching. But she also just won just last year, 2024, she won the state title on the girls' side for La Cueva. So very, very, good, long list of success there as a coach. So I guess kind of correlating with it, regardless if you want to touch base on the state championship or not, just as a program, how do you develop athletes to get to that state title, right? Or as you mentioned, individually to go from, I was JV this year to now I'm starting senior year, or whatever the case is. How do you develop these athletes to go from where they start as a sophomore to where you can count on them as a junior or senior or whatever that timeline looks like?
We have conversations. So, in the spring, I will meet with last year's varsity that will be on next year's varsity. And we kind of tell them, hey, these are expectations for you next year. This is what we need you to work on over the summer. This is where you can get better. And then once I've made my varsity team, it's like, okay, it's a whole new year. So, come this August, I'm going to tell my girls, hey, this is a whole new year. Yes, we won last year, but it doesn't mean we're going to win this year. And this is what we've got to work on. And this is what we have to do. This year, my coaching staff and I kind of changed the way that we run practice. And it completely changed the way that we played the game. And we destroyed most teams that we played because of our ability to hold the ball and to have keep possession. And we completely changed our practices to kind of fit the style of soccer that we wanted. And we took a very Premier League style of it, where we study. I have an all-female coaching staff, and we are all like soccer fanatics, and we study soccer constantly. And one of my other coaches watches soccer as much as I do, and we're always back and forth to each other about Premier League. And we really just studied the way that they do things, and we took 7 drills, and we perfected those 7 drills throughout the season. And those 7 drills, people couldn't touch us on the field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Changed our game, and people couldn't touch us.
Yeah. So, like you said that you study all these different films, right? I mean, just game of soccer in general. I think you have to be a student of the game to be a good coach as well as be a good athlete in a sense, right? But my question that you said was, or I guess my question off of what you said was, you've changed how you guys play. But my question is about like your formation, right? So do you guys run a consistent formation, 3-5-2, 4-3-2-1, whatever the case is, or do you change your formation based off of opponent, or do you change it based off of like every year based off of your athletes? Like, do your athletes have to form to your formation, or do you change your formation based off of teams or athletes?
All of the above. So,
okay.
This year we mostly played a 3-5-2. So 3 defenders, 5 midfielders, 2 forwards, but we can switch quickly to a 4-3-3. So then and my girls we practice it enough where my girls can do it on a throw-in. Okay, we're going to a 4-3-3, like, let's move it. Right. So in the state tournament, we played a 3-5-2 some games we played a 4-3-3, just kind of depending on my personnel, actually. I want teams, so I don't usually move my personnel to play teams. I want teams to have to move their personnel to play me.
Play you, absolutely.
And I will switch things up constantly. Like if I need to play a 5-3, whatever I need to do.
Oh, that would be so frustrating. Just so I would hate that. Five in the back. Oh, I'd be so pissed.
I'm not a 5. I normally would never play a 5 in the back. Every once in a while, but
of course,
my favorite lineup is a 3-5-2, and then the 4-3-3. I really like the 4-3-3 too. So it just kind of depends. So this year, and we tried it last year, and we had an injury, so we had to go to a 4-3-3 because of the injury. This year, we were able to play the 3-5-2. Next year, I don't know what we'll play. I will go off of what I think is best for my team at the moment.
Yeah. And I say that's my favorite because it's just because I played FIFA for a long time, like forever. I played FIFA, and I loved running 3-5-2 with the players the teams that I like to play with. So, but yeah, I've learned to appreciate 3-5-2, even though I don't feel like which maybe I'm just not paying attention enough, but I don't feel like I see a lot of 3-5-2 in the professional world. Maybe not.
There are some teams that play. I mean, they're not doing very well in the Premier League.
But there are some, right? But the better teams are not running 3-5-2s, right? Exactly. But everybody transitions, right? And every part of the world plays what works for them, essentially. But yeah, the 3-5-2 I find is interesting. And so, like, do you ever run, what would that be, a 4-3-1-2? So like with a cam, kind of that central attack midfielder, right? Do you have somebody, or do you ever run that formation with that person there?
Yes, I will have almost every team that I've had, I have a central player that I run the team off of.
I
So
see.
I have my
Yeah, they're
number
kind of like
8.
your.
I have my
Yeah.
number 8, and my girls have to know the numbers on the field. So I have my number 8 or my number 10 that I will run the whole team off of. So if I have a really good 8 and a really good 10, then maybe I play with one 6.
Right.
But then I have personnel that I have 2 amazing 6s on my team right now that are really good. They're 2 juniors. They'll be seniors next year.
Okay.
And so I'll probably run 2 6s again next year because I have the personnel with them to be able to run 2 6s.
Right.
Yeah, so you run that midfielder as kind of like the quarterback, if you would, of the field. They kind of dictate the pace and what we're doing. Yeah, absolutely.
That's exactly right.
Sure.
And they slow the pace down or they speed the pace up for me. And so, they kind of know their place. Yeah.
Yeah. Pace is a huge thing in soccer, and I've talked to other soccer coaches, and I never even talked about pace, which is crazy, because I've, watching, and I know it's all timely too, right? Like you can't, maybe you're not always on a forward pace or high attacking pace. Some teams are counterattack teams. Like for example, USA in 2014, I think, got destroyed by, I can't remember who. I know they played Sweden, so it was hard because I liked. Or maybe it was Switzerland. I don't know. I was a big Zlatan Ibrahimovic fan, so like I know a lot of the. But anyways, I remember watching them play, and we were hopefully going to do well, right? That was like Howard's last year and Donovan's last year, I believe, things like that. And we kept getting counterattacked, and it was like we couldn't stop that. So like knowing who you're playing against, counter versus just like you said, 4 or 5 in the back, slower pace, blah blah blah, plays a huge factor into probably not only who you're playing, but as probably game management is probably huge in the game of soccer. As we all know, it's pretty boring. Well, maybe not for me or for you, but people who are just general watchers, like, dang, they're just passing back and forth in the backfield, right? Or to these back defenders, they're not doing anything. But it's also they're managing what they're trying to get to, whether it's a high, a deep through ball or just clock management, essentially, right? It's huge.
It is huge. And girls don't do it as well as boys do, unfortunately. They just don't see it. Now, there are some girls that are playing the game right now that can clock manage better than any boy I've ever seen play the game, and hold the ball. And so that's really what we worked on this year, was being able to transition properly into offense or stay into defense. And what does that transition look like? I've always been a defensive-minded coach, but an offensive-minded team, if that makes any sense. So, like, I really put value in my defense, and some of my best players always play defense, but we are always foot forward type of team.
Absolutely,
So always going foot forward, but I'm always thinking defense first.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, if you're only focusing on one side of the ball, I mean, you're going to give up something that you don't think about or something, right? Or you're going to put yourself in a bad position.
I see teams that play, and I'm like, why aren't you moving the ball forward? Like, why do you just keep moving the ball sideways or back? And if you would have just made that one, offensive, switch or something, you guys would have had a goal, but they don't do it. And it drives me insane.
Yeah. And that's crazy because they're your opposition too. And you still are like, why wouldn't you do that? Yeah, absolutely. That's fair. No, that's funny. And so I guess kind of going back to, I guess almost at the beginning when we talked about the club, like men versus women's side, right? We all know women's national team have won X amount of gold and whatever you want to call it. They've been really successful. The men's side gets more glory than the girls' side. And I think that's across the board. I think most men's sports do because of revenue share and whatever the argument is of viewership and stuff. But it's interesting. I guess the last piece I just thought of it was like how the development of young athletes in the United States when it comes to soccer is, as you said, like was it in Mexico FC, how we weren't there yet, or not in Mexico United, we weren't there yet to develop the girls' side of things. But yet, if you look on the national scale, the girls are the only people winning. And I have this conversation with like, I guess off air with my friends who like soccer or whatever. But it's like the girls are really good, but they don't get the same recognition. So it's like, but I guess that's across the board too. Like women's basketball goes and wins Olympics too, right? I mean, what else is there? I mean, I guess we have multiple sports that have really good in the women's side of things. But I feel like, and track and field's the same way. They just don't get a lot of the same recognition. I guess track's probably got a lot with Sha'Carri Richardson and some of the people that have
made
Right.
impacts
And
last year.
swimming
But
does too. Swimming's pretty equal on on the, men and women's side of things. It's funny because people say that, but I have never seen, like, when you go to a women's national game, I mean, the stands are packed. I think that the only thing that we don't see it in is the WMLS. Like, so we're
okay,
not seeing like the same revenue share or even like attendance that you would in the
okay,
MLS versus the
right,
WMLS. But like national team wise, I mean, I got upset like in '99 when they won the World Cup, and Brandi Chastain's like taking her blouse off, and people are like, "Oh, women's soccer's just coming up," and I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Women's soccer's been around forever in the United States."
yeah,
And that has been one of the things that I guess is so wonderful about the United States in sports wise for women is that we have led the world in women being able to participate in sports because
that's
Europe's
very
just
fair.
now catching up to us. I mean,
Fair,
like Europe has amazing women Premier League teams, and you got Barcelona, and last year I think 65,000 people showed up to watch the women Barcelona game against Chelsea. I mean, it was
wow,
more people watched that game. Um, so Europe's just now catching up, but that's the issue though, is that once Europe catches American women in soccer, they're going to overtake us because
yeah,
of their development, because of the way that
really,
they develop players. Yeah.
yeah,
And it kind of
that
already
that
happened. It happened a little bit in the Olympics this past year.
yeah,
And I think with the new coach, I don't know if it will happen as much because I think that Emma's going to, kind of clean house a little bit and
yeah,
bring in some younger players. Because I think, in my opinion, we held on to the old ladies way too long because they were old ladies playing the game and they needed to go. But I think that once Europe gets there, Europe then will be the superpower in women's soccer.
wow.
Interesting. Yeah. Guess we'll be on the lookout for that then over the next few years, and hopefully not, but that's cool. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a general question, and so I appreciate you kind of breaking that down as since you obviously you dive in, or I should say you are a much bigger viewer, I guess, than and maybe see some of these things a little bit more than I've paid attention to. So that's great. I appreciate that breakdown. So now we kind of move to the back half of this. I know we've talked a lot about philosophy in a sense of like maybe coaching, but I'm going to talk a little bit, or I should say the game. But I want to talk to you truly more of the coaching side of things. So kind of my favorite questions on this back half. So how do you build a successful culture on the level of buy-in and mindset?
It's a conversation that I have over and over and over again with the girls. It's just
Okay,
something that like I start my spring meeting with. This is our expectations. Here we go. This is if you want to win a state championship, this is what it takes. And I have been blessed enough to have won two state championships at La Cueva and then got to coach a bunch. So it's kind of like, hey, I know the recipe for success. We've got to be able to, you know, produce these things or we're not going to win. And I've gotten lucky some years. I've had teams that had no business winning a state championship, and we won a state championship. But luck comes into it. Um, Being really good at the last like 4 games of the season is, kind of like, push things. But just those types of things and having the girls from day one understand what it takes to win the state championship.
right.
And then we just talk about it constantly.
Yeah, so keeping it in the forefront of their mind, absolutely. So I guess this question just got brought up or in my head, but I think about like the best football teams in the country, high school wise, modern day, St. John or St. John Bosco, Bishop Gorman, whatever. These guys are traveling nationwide to face the best football teams as well. So like on the same side, and I know we talked about club level and how they travel, but like as you as a hi buddy, he has to make an appearance. He had to make an appearance.
I'm in your lap, Mama. Get
Do you ever take your girls on the high school level to bigger team, like to bigger tournaments, or to to see better talent, just because, and I'm not saying like Centennial's got a pretty good soccer program down south. I know there's some decent, and I don't. I guess I'm saying this on like I don't know about the girls' side. I just know I've seen their name in the title in the postseason every year. But like I guess just on a national scale, like as I'm a wrestling coach, I take my kids, took them, and we have taken them to tournaments in different states because we know we got to see that talent to kind of see where we got to work on truly. And we also want to see better talent than just the same teams every week. But I think that gets us better too, right? So we can develop in areas we need to get better at and just see where we stack up. So do you take your team to tournaments in season to maybe put yourself against a good team in Arizona or Colorado or Texas or anything like that, or bring teams in to go against you guys?
Well, APS had a rule that we were not allowed to travel outside of the state of New Mexico for
I remember that.
And that 2 years ago they changed it. So it's taken. So just for the past 2 years, we've been able to travel. We had new leadership, thank goodness, at APS that came in for athletics, and they were like, "Well, if the rest of the state can travel, why can't APS travel?" And it was just this huge APS ordeal because, in my opinion, APS is so big that it needs to kind of, get blown up, be into smaller districts. But thank goodness they changed it. So last year, I took my team to Cleveland, Ohio, and we played two teams out in Cleveland, Ohio. And they're very well ranked. We ended up tying and losing the game, but we got to go see things like we played a team, Strongville in Cleveland, Ohio, and they had 4 girls on their national teams in Europe. I mean, we're playing teams. The issue with New Mexico is that no state around us plays high school soccer
in the fall.
Right. Yep. I'm so thankful we played in the fall because you only get you can't be an All-American unless you play soccer in the fall. And so my girls get national recognition. So Texas plays it in the winter, Arizona plays it in the winter, Colorado plays it in the spring. But this next year, so in this coming up fall, I'm taking my team to Seattle, and we are playing the Washington State Championships. So we're going to play the team that just won their state championship. Prep, it's Seattle Prep, I think is the name of it. They call themselves just Prep. So we're going to play them and another really good team in Seattle this coming fall. So we can not only see different parts of the United States that some of these girls haven't seen, but see some competition and to be able to travel with the high school team. It was one of the best trips I've ever been on, and I've traveled all over. Taking my girls to Cleveland this past year was one of the best things I've ever done, and we absolutely loved it. We had so much fun.
Yep. And I think that's I think it's very important to be able to do that, not only as an athletic side, but I think as a coaching staff and maybe community to show hey, we're willing to put ourselves out there to compete, right? Like my senior year, we traveled to Garden Springs, Kansas, as my team, and we traveled with, us in Cleveland. We got a bus together. This is when we were kind of coming up, whatever. Financials back then were a little bit different, but we went to Kansas together. I took my team to Salt Lake City to go wrestle at a big tournament up there. Granted, keep in mind, right? This is you had to be within 500 miles at least of the bus. Right. That was our conditions, unless you got a charter bus. But still Salt Lake City, Garden City, Kansas. I know some schools I know Cleveland just took their team to Kansas City out there. I think that I guess long story short is I think that those things bring a lot of camaraderie to that current team. Obviously having fun, but also I think longevity and long term wise, it kind of shows hey, we're willing to grow our program to be on a national in-season scale, right? We want to bring the best competition in, but we also want to go compete against the best competition out there too, and hopefully you can bring in some really good teams hey, we're gonna go against the New Mexico State champs and they fly in or whatever the case is.
So 2 years ago, Strongville, the team that we went and played last year, came to play us in Albuquerque.
Nice. Okay.
And so I was like, okay, let's go play them, because I had the contacts and everything. And so we reciprocated and went and played them. And she has been their coach for 8 years. And I know I coached an All-American game with their coach previous, and they take their team all over the United States every single year. I mean, it's just something that they do. And so I was like, this is something that I'm going to start doing. And so I've started to make all these contacts now with coaches across the country, so we can go and play teams and have that camaraderie. But yeah, show, hey, we're going to go play the Washington State champion, and so let's see how New Mexico holds up against
absolutely
the championship team out of Washington.
It's the only way that Mexico can get on the board or on the national rankings of no matter. I mean, like I know Cleveland travels to Texas and plays football. I know La Cueva did the same thing, I think, this year.
We went to Arizona.
Arizona.
Our football team went to Arizona.
Yep, and I know like Piedra Vista football, they went to Texas, and it's like you kind of like if you want to get your teams to be on a and granted, not everybody wants that, but I think that if you want your athletics to get to a point where we're not overlooked, you have to do those things not only as a school, maybe district, but I think as a state, you have to kind of all agree like if we want this to grow and get to a point where we're not overlooked by recruiting or take us serious. We have to do that. So I love that you take your kids and go out of state and do that with them.
Yeah, I wish more teams did it, in all honesty. I mean, it's a process. I mean, we flew to Cleveland, you have to rent vans and, it's a process, but it's something that I think that like if programs started to do it more, it would be a little bit easier, but I think that they would really benefit from the ability to be able to take their team across the nation. It's such a cool thing. I always got so jealous of all of like the Rio Rancho schools and like, they got to travel. And I was like, well, why can't we travel?
Yep, absolutely, yeah, and I love that APS is finally able to, or allowing you guys to do that, and so like, are you guys? So I guess just real quick on that, like when you flew to Cleveland or like example, or not Cleveland, yeah, I guess it was Cleveland. I'm thinking Cleveland High School to Cleveland, or you're gonna fly to Washington. Do you think that means that, like, for example, if you guys are you guys playing like a Saturday Sunday game? So that means like you're flying in on Thursday, or are you guys flying in Wednesday?
This past year, we flew in on Wednesday, and then we had Thursday. We went to, I took the girls to the Guardians game. And so we went and watched a professional, baseball game. And we went to Lake Erie because most of the girls had never seen a Great Lake. And so we, took them to Lake Erie. We put our feet in the water and walked around Lake Erie a little bit. And so we did things that like you would not be able to see, typical like
otherwise.
And then we played Friday, Saturday, and then we came home on Sunday. And we're going to do the same in Seattle. We're going to go up on a Wednesday. We'll have Thursday off to practice and kind of get our bearings and go do some sightseeing that, we normally wouldn't ever be able to do. And then we're playing Friday afternoon and then Saturday at noon.
Okay.
And then home on Sunday.
I got you.
And
Okay.
there's a MLS game that weekend there in Seattle, so we're going to try to be able to go to a game.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, put on and show a little New Mexico flavor when you go to watch it in MLS. So that's cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So then, how do you build a successful program? And I know you kind of answered this a little bit earlier about like the development of your athletes. So it may be the same question, and if it is, you don't have to answer. You can be like, I already answered that. But how do you build a successful program on a level of wins, and then how do you sustain it over time?
It starts with my coaching staff. A lot of my coaches have all played for me. I only have one coach. She actually played at El Dorado. She scored the winning goal one year against us in the semifinal game. But
man,
she doesn't let you live that one down.
Yeah, but it really does start with my staff because they've all played for me and they all understand what it takes to win, and they all know what my expectations are. So I set expectations. My staff knows what the expectations are, and we kind of move forward. And I think that because we've had such a successful winning program, that when girls are freshmen, they know they're coming to La Cueva to win championships. And so it's just kind of a mindset that gets started, sometimes even in the 7th grade where I don't even have a conversation with these girls until they're freshmen. But they kind of know, hey, La Cueva wins. This is what the expectations are. And then we just continually have those conversations about what our expectations are. And I set a very, very high standard, and I expect my girls to meet that high standard. I'm not lowering the bar for anything.
Yeah.
So when you say you have a high standard, just in a few, like what are a few that you feel like have been in place for this whole time that you have never changed, in a sense of like what's your top 2 or 3 most important standards that you have in your program?
The top winning district usually, gets us there. So, our expectation is to win district. And then my expectation is to be in the finals, at least the semifinals, and only 3 times in my coaching history at La Cueva. So ever since La Cueva's been a program, but only 3 times for me, we lost in the quarterfinal game. We have not played in that semifinal game. And so that is something that is just ingrained in us, that we are expected to get to that semifinal game, and we are actually expected to be in the finals. I've won 10 state championships as a coach, and we've gotten second place 9 times as a coach. So, 19 times we've played in that state final game. And so that's just something that is that's our expectation, and there's no lowering that.
Yep, absolutely. I like that. You expect to be in the game, right? And we all know that the game can go one way or another. You never know how it goes, but your goal, your expectation is we're going to be there. So
that's right.
I like it. I like that a lot. Dang, it got me hyped up.
I got 1 more year of eligibility, coach. Just kidding.
Sweet. So, I guess to kind of finish up, I have 2 more questions for you. One is, do you have any tips or advice for new or struggling coaches, I guess in general, when it comes to
when it
I
comes to
think
coaching?
that whatever sport you're coaching, whatever sport it is, like, immerse yourself in that sport. Really try to get and have some fun with it. Like, my girls know that I'm a Liverpool fanatic. And so if my girls are Man U fans or Chelsea fans or whatever it may be, like, there's banter that goes on between us. But that they respect the fact that I know the game. And so just immerse yourself into whatever that sport is. Try to, like, really, get in there. But also listen to your athletes. As coaches, it's sometimes really hard. But I will sit down and have conversations with athletes. Like, I have a player on my team. I'm superstitious about everything. Like, I have to wear the same outfit, the same clothes. Like, I'm very superstitious. Well, I have a player on my team that's just as superstitious as me. And so we sit down and we have conversations about, like, I tried to change my shoes once this year and she got mad at me. And I had another pair of shoes in the car because I always wear the same shoes, and I tried to change it. So those types of things. Have the ability to have openness with your players. I think they will respect you for being human.
Yeah, for sure.
Because sometimes they put us on this, like, oh, I can't touch her. I don't want to have a conversation with her because she's up here. And if I can banter with them back and forth, then I'm human to them. And I'm very honest about making mistakes. And, that didn't work for us. So let's move on and let's try something different.
Absolutely.
So I think that as we go as a coach, we have to, come down to their level, on the level of personality, be vulnerable in a sense, right? And let them know that we actually care about them and more than just winning it and what they do on the pitch or whatever sport it is. So absolutely fair. So we came down to my final question for you. It's my favorite question. You've answered every question I have, so I appreciate it. If you guys are still listening and you guys like this New Mexico coach, make sure you guys like, subscribe, all the 9 yards. If you're on YouTube, if you're an audio listener, make sure you guys leave a review. Hit those stars, say what you got to say, but say it with your chest because me and Coach want to hear it. My final question for you is, why do you coach? What is your coach's why?
My coach's why is for my players. I once was them. I once was a high school girl playing in the same school, wearing the same, not uniform, but the same colors. And I understood what it was like to be them. I understood what it was like to be a teenage girl having to play a sport and what that means. And so, like, going through all these years, it always comes back to my players, and I love them. Like, I love the sport of soccer, but I love my players and I do it for them.
Yeah.
I love that. You do it for your players. I love that. Have you ever thought about trying to go to the college level?
Everyone asks me that. So far, no. So far, I love being at La Cueva. That's kind of all I've ever known, and I love the community at La Cueva, and so I'll stay there. Not a whole lot longer, but a little bit longer, and
we'll see how
kind of
longer.
go from there.
Yeah.
Hey, you have a resume that a lot of coaches in the college level would probably love to have you up there. I'm sure you've got that before. So,
yeah.
No, that's cool. I mean, I just, hey, if you don't, then the Cueva's going to keep doing what they're doing. If you do, though, I'd love to see what you can do at the next level and see if you can take that same, what's the right word? That same success and transition in the college. So I'll be looking for that time when that time comes. But yeah, Coach, I appreciate you jumping on here. I feel like it was a really good episode, talking a lot more about schematics than I probably thought we would, but I think that it was really, really good episode. Thanks for sharing everything you did. I'd love to have you back on for another time, maybe some point talk we talked a lot about schematics, but maybe talk about what a day-to-day practice looks like, if you're willing to give up the sauce. I've heard from other Metro coaches that Metro coaches don't like to give up too much sauce. They don't like to give up too much info. So maybe you don't have to dive into it, but maybe some for general terms of this, we have this, blah, blah, blah. Off-season practice looks like this versus in-season, right? Things like that. I don't know, but love to have you back on.
I would love to be back on.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Yeah, and like I said, I appreciate you so much. I appreciate you guys also for listening and watching to this or watching this. So hope to see you guys on the next episode. But with that being said, we'll see you guys next time. Peace. I don't know why I did this with my hand. I don't know what I'm doing. See you guys next time. Peace.